The next class we're going to create is very much more simple than the one that we've got here, which is the import data class. That's complicated, but don't worry, you've got the code, and all you have to do is accurately copy that code through and your class will work. It will build properly so the application can compile it into machine code that will be executed on the computer. So the next class is going to deal with what were we going to do with the data once we've got it in using this class. Now this class is a method only class. It uses this one method and it has nothing else to do. And our next class is going to deal with the data that it finds when it gets there. We need a structure for that data. We need a kind of a template for that data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my right hand side here in Solution Explorer. Now picking the project, not the solution. Right click, add a class. And I'm going to call this class PartData. And PartData is just a name. It could be any name for it, but this is car parts. It's kind of seemed to make sense. In your one that you've got to do, it might be called something different entirely. So I'm going to call it PartData, and they should be all one word, the names of our classes. So add it, and that will then be added. And then the first thing I always do is make it public. And that's now a public class that's going to be available throughout the application. Now what we're going to do here is I'm going to do what we should all do when we're making code, is add a descriptor. PartData, today's the 17th, yeah that's right, and it's just holding the data in each line of the text file. So let's look at that text file and see what data we have to work with. Our unit number, our manufacturer number is a number. It's an integer, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Integer being a whole number. Our manufacturer is the name of the manufacturer, and that's in most cases it's one word. Yes, it's one word in all of them. And that's what we would call a string. It's a string of characters, and the rest of them are going to be strings too. The model is a string of characters, 1.1 Mondeo, 2.3 Prius, and so forth. And our part is also a string. So we need to set up a class, and it won't have any methods. It will just have data that it can work with when it's getting to work with all of this data that finds in which import data finds in the text file. So let's go back to Visual Studio, and it's really easy. In here, we have to give, there's a special code you can use in Visual Studio. It's PROP, and it stands for property. I then press the tab button, and it says what type of property. In our first one, it's an int, and then manu number, and that's the same name as I've got in my text file. Go to the end with tab, and go to the next line. So I've got one property, which is an integer, the manu number. Where's my text file? There it is. The manu number, 1, 2, 3, I've only got 3 of them. So that represents the value for that. So this class can now hold integers in that field. So the next one, once again, prop, tab, string. Okay? And the string represents the type of data that it's going to hold and gives a name that says it's about the manufacturer. So that's a perfectly useful name. Go to the end, prop. String again. Tab, tab, model. It's the model of the type of car. So you can see we're still representing the data exactly as we're getting it out of the text file. And the final one we'll do, of course, is the part itself, and that's going to be the principal cause of our interest when we get to the application. So once again, prop, string, part, and we're done. That's our class, that's our car part data, and it can now be set up to hold the data from one line of text, and we can have even lists of part data. So we can have lists of collections that we can use, and that's what we'll do in the next class. So we've now got this class set up. Save it, build solution, build succeeded. The next class that we want to build is another method only class. And what it's going to do is it's going to make lists of data that we're going to use in the form. So you remember our problem is that we need to be able to select a manufacturer, and based on that manufacturer that's selected, we want to get only the models that they make. We've then got to be able to select a model, and then from that model that's selected, we want to be able to display and select only the parts that relate to that model. So this is with the drill down. This is the cascade through the data that we're going to be using in this particular strategy that we've got. Now in this video, what I'll do is I'll set up the class and I'll put in the method signatures, and then in the next video I'll put in the code for the methods. And there are 3 methods that we want to use. One which relates to each of the combo boxes on the form. So let's add another class. Right click on the project and we do the add and then class, and I'm going to call this one lists. It's as good a name as any because that's what it does. It could be data lists, it could be anything. You can call it anything you want. So once again we're going to make it public, and public's really important because we're going to be using this class in the form class, and it's a really important thing that you understand that a public class is the only one that can be used outside of itself. So that's what we've done, and we've now created our class. So what I'll do is I'll create the first of the signature methods for each of the methods that we're going to use. So inside the curly braces, we want to have a public method. Code word, public. We also want it to be static. Now I said not to worry about that, but this makes it really easy to use when we're using it in other parts of the application. Now we then say, what is this method going to return? It's going to return a list. A list of what? String. This will be a list of string, which in this case will be the manufacturers. So what we want to do is we want to say the name of the method is manufacturers. Manufacturers. So then what we need to tell it is, where is it going to get this list? It's going to be coming from something that we'll tell it when we use it, which is a data table. Remember, our import data returns a data table, and we're going to call that data table DT when we use it. So that's our first signature. Just one more thing I'm going to add to make that squiggly red line go away. When we're making our list, what we'll do is we'll have a list inside the method, just a temporary list that we'll use to handle the data as we make it, and then that's what we'll use to give our return value when the method is finished. So we need another list of what? String. Obviously, I would have thought. And I'm just going to call this temp manufacturers. It's a holding area for things as we're working with them, equals new list string. So that's how you set up a temporary list inside here, and that's what we'll return after our method is finished. The red line has gone away. It says, oh, I know what I'm going to have to return when this is over, when all the code has run. So that's the first of our signatures. Now what we do in order to make this code really, really industrially strong is we put commentary like we've done before. Remember, 3 slashes, and it gives you a little set of pre-populated data, and it knows that it's going to use that DT as a data in, and we'll say, excuse me, with this get manufacturers. What does it return? A list of strings. So that's the first method. Now the other 2 methods that we're going to make are really similar. So what I'll do is I'll go a little bit more quickly on this next one. So it's public static list of string, And the name we should give this one is Models by Manufacturer. And I hope that makes sense, that for each manufacturer we want to find a list of strings of the models that they make. And once again we've got data table. DT is the source of where we're going to find this information, and remember we're going to import that from our text file. And then once again we're going to have a list of strings. Let's call it temp models equals new list of strings. That's that, and that's the list initialized. And then that should actually always be a small t. Right, so that's the next one. So once again we'll put some comments in at the top, and that's going to be get models by manufacturer selected, and it's going to return list of strings. One of the really good ways of doing this commentary like this is that Visual Studio, when it compiles it, there's add-ons you can buy for Visual Studio, or maybe you can get for free, I don't know which, but it will look for this type of code and it will help to put together help documentation based on what it finds in these summaries, and it makes your documentation really easy to create. So for the next one, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paste that in.